And thanks for agreeing to talk to us on video for BioNews. And as I mentioned to you, the story is going to run across our rare disease websites. We have about 37 of them now, and we hope to publish maybe next week if we can. I wanted to focus on your talk today about patient registries. For those who were not able to attend in person, I'm hoping you can give a summary of your presentation now. Just maybe if you could just talk 5 minutes, maybe about why it's important and what's new since our last article.
Okay. So registries and natural history studies for rare diseases, they're basically collections of data. And we're focusing, of course, on health and scientific data. They can be broad collections, they can be narrow collections, but what we're trying to do is to better understand a rare disease or an aspect of a rare disease. This is especially important for rare diseases because rare diseases are generally poorly understood. There aren't very many patients with a rare disease, and there aren't very many experts for any rare disease. So often they haven't been studied and we just don't understand them as well as we would like. This is very important because if you're trying to develop a research program or develop a potential therapeutic for a rare disease, any kind of research or drug development has to occur in context, and that would be the context of the disease. So for example, if you're trying to design a clinical trial around a rare disease, well, what are you going to measure? You have to know what endpoints, what are the things that are affecting patients the most, what are the things patients care about, how are we going to measure that, over what period of time would we have to run our study. So these are all things that you would learn in a registry or a natural history study. So we would like to see more natural history studies done for our rare diseases. And actually, we would really like to see a registry done in each of the rare diseases, but we have about 7,000 rare diseases, so it would be very hard for any one group to do studies or build a repository for all of them. So what we started and really accelerated in the past few months was what we're calling RADAR, which stands for the Rare Diseases Registry Program. And this is an initiative by Ncats where we're trying to develop an educational resource for patients and patients groups. It's targeted towards patient groups so that they can start building their own registries or at least plan a registry. And we're especially trying to help people understand good data practices and things like data governance and how to what to collect, how to collect it, how to engage with other stakeholders. And again, it's so they can educate themselves to plan for and build better registries where we'll have good quality data and that this data would be useful. You can use it again, you can share it, it can be interoperable with other efforts.
How many diseases have their own registries right now?
Yeah, I don't think anybody knows. There's no registry of registries. I would say a lot, certainly hundreds to thousands, possibly.
Hundreds or thousands?
Yeah, we've seen a big uptake in recent years. I think it's become increasingly recognized that registries are very useful, but they're also a first step in trying to put together a research program. It helps to unite the community. Patients get to know each other. They can collaborate and they can do outreach from there.
Okay. Could you talk about the structure of this program through Ncats, who funds it, what the budget is, what it costs to run, how many people are working on it?
It's run by Ncats, specifically the Office of Rare Diseases Research. It's our staff mainly does it. We do have patients and a few other collaborators who volunteer their time essentially. And we're trying to make this useful for the patient groups, so we're really trying to get their feedback. So it's run out of our office. It doesn't have a specific budget just for this project. It's part of all our larger efforts.
Can we say just roughly what the budget is, the overall Ncats budget for Office of Rare Disease Research?
Somewhere around $20 million.
$20 million? Okay.
Yeah.
So about the same as the last time we spoke. And what are some of the largest disease registries in the rare disease world in this country?
The longest, best established, largest kind of gold standard registry is run by the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation.
That's what I thought.
This is an effort they started, I think it was back in the 1960s. They've been collecting data for a very long time. It's now a very mature database. They include patient care, drug development. It's really spread into all aspects. So,
And this is the gold standard of registries.
yeah, it really is. And they've developed many treatments, patient care practice, standardization, biomarkers. They've just done an incredible job.
And what are some other organizations that have well-established registries that we can mention?
The Duchenne muscular dystrophy, there are several organizations and there are several registries, but they're doing things like they have an imaging registry repository where they're doing serial MRIs for muscle groups as well as clinical markers, patient care. That's very well organized. Some of the smaller organizations like Friedreich's Ataxia Research Association, they have an excellent registry going. And through our, those are just a few examples. There are many organizations doing this. But through our Ncats Rare Diseases Clinical Research Network, all of our consortia, as part of their grants, their cooperative awards that they receive, they're required to do longitudinal observational studies. So we have about 250 diseases that have longitudinal natural history data.
250 diseases, and these are grouped into these consortia. As I recall, like 25 consortia, something like that?
We have 21 consortia right now.
21 consortia, and how many diseases in those consortia total?
Right now it's about 200, but these are recompeted every 5 years. So over these 15, close to 20 years we've been running this now, we have about 250 disease registries.
250?
Yeah.
Okay. And you said Radar has been around just for a couple of years? It's relatively recent, right?
Yeah, Radar actually started as a different project. It started as a pilot project called the GRDR, where ORDR was actually building registries with 12 patient groups. So that went on for a number of years as a pilot, first building the registries, then trying to do post hoc data processing to try to make them interoperable. So we took all the lessons learned from that and realized that it was going too slow, and we were trying to outreach to many more patient groups because many people were approaching us wanting to do registries. And that's when we changed it to Radar about 2 years ago. But we just put out a lot of materials right before Rare Disease Day this year.
Okay. How many people are working on this project at any given time?
About a dozen, I guess.
And so you said you do work with some patient advocacy groups, some of which I assume are represented here today.
Yes.
You mentioned Parent Project Muscular Dystrophy?
Yeah.
PPMD?
We're not working with them directly. They do have a very good registry. Ron Bartek, who runs Friedreich's Ataxia, he's actually part of Ncats Advisory Board, and he's just been wonderful in volunteering his time and helping us.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay.
Yeah, Megan O'Boyle, who's also here, she's with the Phelan-McDermid syndrome. Megan O'Boyle. Yeah, she's also been advising us and a few other parents as well.
Any other rare diseases that our readers might know that were part of your board or advisory board?
Well, the Ncats Council includes Ron and Megan and Sharon Terry from Genetic Alliance used to be part of our board.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier the importance of registries. Could you maybe explain to people that may not even know what a registry is, why are they important and why today?
Well, registry, it's a very general term. It just refers to a broad collection of data. So you could, for example, have something very simple like a contract registry. So all you're really collecting is who are you and how can we get in touch with you, like your email address. And some people do that as really a first step in trying to unite a community, and they can be actually very effective. So you can You can do email blasts out when there's scientific news, or get in touch with your community, or
Right.
if there's a clinical trial or you want to get in touch with an investigator, you can say, well, I have 50 people with this disease, which for some rare diseases can be an awful lot.
Could it be as simple as a Facebook group?
Yes, people do that exactly.
So that could kind of count as a registry of sorts, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's
okay.
like a communication registry, and people do that. It's a free resource. They can build a community that way. So yes, that happens. And then you can have, very complicated registries like a natural history study where you're trying to collect very detailed information about the course of the disease. And you can have just, for example, lab data collections or biorepositories, or just an imaging registry. Or you could have any number of these components mixed into one. So it depends on what your research goals are, what resources you may have to work with at a time. And these can evolve. They can get bigger, they can get smaller, depending on what the needs are of the community. And in some cases, and I think that this is increasing now, if you have a good understanding of the disease, sometimes these natural history studies can serve as a comparator, a historical comparator in a clinical trial. A historical comparator in a clinical trial. So, for example, some of these very effective therapies we're seeing now, gene therapies, where the results are really quite striking, you can use the historical comparison with the data that you have as a comparator in the trial.
Okay. Could you give some examples of some of these strikingly effective therapies where registries have played a role?
Sure. Dr. Austin actually showed one this morning as in part of his talk, a disease called AADC, which is it's an inherited disorder where young children are born with a lack of a neurotransmitter. It's like you're born with a very severe form of Parkinson's disease. So Ncats participated in a trial with a company, Agilis, where they gave gene therapy. So the natural history of the disease from the registry was used as the comparator. So these were children who really could not move, and some of them were able to get up and walk and to sit up and to use their arms. So what we know about the disease is that would just never have happened. That never would have happened. So this was very remarkable and was used as a comparator.
What about Spinraza and SMA? Do you have comparative
Spinraza,
studies?
I believe, had a placebo-control group. So,
But as you mentioned in your talk, you don't really want to put families through that, right? Especially if it's a disease that has no hope. They don't want to be taking a placebo if the drug can actually help them.
It really depends on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
You can't always use a historical comparator. The magnitude of the effect has to be very big. And it has to be something that's very objectively measured. So survival, or something like nobody could walk and now we have people walking. It has to be something fairly dramatic. So you can't use that in every situation, but you can use that in some situations.
Could you just talk a little bit maybe about, and then we'll wrap it up pretty soon. You mentioned a little bit about the structure, how this is organized in NIH. I know there's been some talk about funding and cutting NIH budget, etc. Is this program assured of having money to continue through the next few years at least? Do you know?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Obviously, this comes from Congress, but Congress has always been very supportive of NIH.
Okay.
It's very supportive of medical research, and I think everybody recognizes the important work that NIH does.
Do you work at all with NORD?
Yes.
Okay. What's the extent of that collaboration?
Well, that's interesting because NORD does have a natural history program that they run. And I remember in our conversations with them, they were talking about how helpful it would be to them if we were able to help with educating the patient community on things like data standards and things that I've been talking about for rare diseases. So it was
Right.
actually some of this did come out of conversations with them and with other patient groups about how helpful it would be to have a source of information.
That about wraps it. Is there anything you'd like to tell our readers, maybe, that I haven't asked you?
Well, it's just thank you so much for coming to this event and other rare disease events. I've been in rare diseases about 20 years now, and just see the growth in the research, the patient community, and just have so many stakeholders here at such a large event that just keeps growing every year. I mean, it's just wonderful to see these scientific opportunities we didn't have for our patients even a few years ago. There's so many more things are possible.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.